where this is still a problem.
Now, the PR people for the people who are against genetic engineering use the term frankenfood for genetically modified corn and, well, all crops. What would you say to someone who is saying we should not create frankenfood, we should leave food natural?
Well, this is a ridiculous position that they've taken. If you look at this genetic makeup of the bred wheat, which constitutes more than 95% of all the wheat produced in the world, that is a natural cross that was done in prehistory by crossing wild wheat with two other grasses to produce the basic chromosome number that we are dealing with to further improve with genetic modification of the traditional time, and more recently with the modern transgenics. So this is a lot of nonsense, just like the same thing in organic versus chemical fertilizer. For God's sakes, I've always said, use all the organic fertilizer that's available, but don't come around the third world nations telling them that they can produce the food that's needed with organic fertilizer. We're using, in the case of nitrogen, more than 80 million tons a year. And if we tried to produce that with cattle manure, we would have to increase world cattle population by about sixfold, and then we'd have the problem of distributing this massive volume. It's a lot of nonsense, and this comes from people who have never produced 1 ton of food in their entire lifetime.
I'm on that list. I've never produced a ton of food in my lifetime either. I want to ask you, Norman, if the world were run the way I want it, if someone said, Penn Jillette, you now have complete power over the whole world. You can get people to do what you want. I would immediately say, please give all my power to Dr. Norman Borlaug. If you had more power than you had in terms of the government and in terms of people's actions, what would you do to feed the world? What should all of us be pushing for to do the little bit that we can do to help people who are starving in other countries?
I would start with a broader picture than food. I would say the first thing I would like to see is universal primary education, and as soon as possible, secondary education. One of the problems at the present time, especially in the affluent nations like the USA and Western European countries, is that the major part of the population are urban. There's only 1 or 2% in rural areas. Most of those people, after the second generation, have lost their roots to the soil. They don't understand the complexities of feeding a population of now well past the 6 billion, going towards 7 billion. And this is where the problem comes. We don't spend our money, or you don't program our efforts to solve the really basic problems. We spend $900 billion, the world does, on military and armaments, but very little, by contrast, on food and agricultural production.
And a lot of your funding for the projects you've done over your lifetime has been corporations and private and not the government. Is that right? I mean, the Rockefeller and the Ford Foundation were really very helpful in the 60s of the Green Revolution. Is that right?
They were the pioneers that started this program in Mexico and in the Philippines. And from those, there were spun off the so-called Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research Centers, of which there are 16 now. But those are funded by many organizations. But the original funding, you were right, was by the two foundations, Ford, Rockefeller first, and Rockefeller Foundation, and then the Ford Foundation.
Well, Leon, we're starting to finish up here a little bit. How long did you work on the book, The Man Who Fed the World?
About a year and a half, 24/7. But I first met Dr. Borlaug 40 years ago in Pakistan and helped introduce his technology there, which led to the Green Revolution, and have followed his career ever since. So I knew about him and knew all the wonderful things he had done. So I didn't have to do as much research as somebody starting from scratch.
And what do you think when people, because people really should buy the book, The Man Who Fed the World by Leon Hesser, about Dr. Norman Borlaug, what would you like them to take away from the book? When they finish the whole thing, as Godot and I have, what do you want us to be remembering about your book 10 years from now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the things that Norman has done is develop high-yielding people as well as high-yielding varieties. In other words, in the centers that he's worked in Mexico, and the same model was used to start centers in other parts of the world, there was a large training component. And so he has developed high-yielding people. And I think that his goal, and I would share that, would be to have young people interested in the food and the population and education problems of the world, and become scientists or related endeavors that would help solve that problem.
So that's part of what the World Food Prize is meant to do, isn't that right?
Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
Where do you think? What's the next breakthrough? I'll ask both of you, and I've got less than a minute now, so I'll be quick. What's the next breakthrough that's going to make your jaw drop? What's the next thing they're going to do in biotechnology that's just going to tell you, boy, we really can feed a lot more people?
Well, I think the ability to transfer genes across these borders where we couldn't, from different taxonomic groups, we don't know. We're hopeful that not only will we be able to increase better nutritional quality, better drought resistance, better cold resistance in certain cases, and better disease resistance, but we may actually find genes present in these wide crosses that we couldn't make before because of sterility that will give us a jump in yield further.
Thank you so much. It's no exaggeration. There's no hyperbole to say that I have never been more honored than talking to you, Dr. Borlaug. And thank you so much for taking time and letting those people starve when you should be working and being on our radio show here. Dr. Norman Borlaug, and the book is by Leon Hesser. It's called The Man Who Fed the World. And I have tears in my eyes just from being able to talk to these guys. This is Penn Jillette, Mike Godot. Thanks so much. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.